used to hate driving in the dark. It didn't matter if I was entering the freeway or if I was turning onto the road. Those bright lights always stole my intent and my vision, and I didn't know if I was going in the right direction. Well, this particular night, I actually wasn't thinking about the road. You see, I was 18 years old. I had just left my boyfriend's house, and I was on top of the world. I knew how to do everything in my mind, except how to get home on curfew. So I am driving home, really not thinking about the road, well, I can't quite tell you what I was thinking about. But before I could get my thoughts back into alignment, I felt that familiar shift in the steering wheel. My dad's voice popped back into my mind. Theresa, fix your alignment, or it's going to get you off course. Well, Dad, I knew what I was doing. I was busy. I didn't have time to go to the mechanic shop. Who has time when you're running your race, right? Before, though, I could win the argument in my mind with my dad, that little shift became a tremble that I could no longer control. In fact, I heard this noise as I was trying to hold on to the steering wheel, but before I could even figure out what it was, I had to let go. It was shaking so bad, and all of a sudden I'm going this way, and now I'm going this way. I see the median right over it. Those lights are coming at me. But before I knew what was happening, I heard a noise, I felt the metal, and I froze. When I woke up, all I could think about, and for many years later, the question was, how did that happen? You see, misalignment doesn't happen the minute the vehicle comes off of the lot, right? Misalignment happens as you're driving down the highway and you're picking up some road damage. When you hit that pothole, when you accidentally do that curb check one too many times, that's when things start getting a little bit off course. And as my dad would say, fix your alignment, because if you don't, it's dangerous. Well, as I continue down the highway of life, I found myself in this new route, the banking career. And I was absolutely determined because I didn't actually feel like I earned that position. But I was determined. I was going to make sure that I climbed that ladder of success. And so even though I never really felt qualified, I applied for every opportunity for promotion. I applied for every chance. In fact, just like you sitting here, I actually went home and practiced selling checking accounts to my kids, my dogs, and all of the stuffed animals that I still had. Like, I was determined that I was going to be the absolute best that I could be. But as I continued to drive to work, I started feeling that unsettling in my stomach. As I started to question, is there more to life than this? You see, I felt in my world that my superpower was the ability to inspire and to encourage and to pump people up. But when I realized as I took on another position of leadership, they didn't really reward inspiration. They really only cared about production. And part of me started to just feel like I was dying. I could ignore it for a while until one day at 9:15 a.m. on a normal Tuesday morning, I looked over at my caller ID, and right on time was the call from my district manager. "How's it going in Taylor, Theresa?" he said. Normally my answer, my sane answer, ball it be a lie, was everything's great. We're on track for our numbers. It's a great day in Taylor, Texas. But this day, something happened from the time I saw his name and answered the phone. A vision popped in my head. And it was so vivid. It literally took all of my attention, and it took the filter completely off of my mouth. And before I could even control it, my answer to my district manager was, Ryan, I feel like I'm in an elephant's graveyard. What does that mean? He said. I really don't know, but I think I need to figure it out. You see, when I went home and I studied what an elephant's graveyard was, I learned that these elephants, these beautiful, magnificent creatures, and I hope you take a picture with one downstairs, these beautiful creatures so full of life and energy and tribe mentality have this power in them. But eventually, they slowly drift off on their own to die. And I realized that that's exactly what I was doing. I had all of this desire and energy and passion and power, but I was on the wrong path. And so I decided it was time for me to get back into alignment again and figure out who Theresa Pore was. Well, as I became that journey, I started becoming more and more aware of other areas in my life that I was out of alignment. But I really started ignoring them because you know what? Who likes those flashing signs that are coming at you anyway, right? But I couldn't ignore the signs that I saw in my mom. You see, my mom, while we weren't super close, I always admired her beautiful smile. When she walked into a room, she literally lit it up with her smile and her energy. But slowly over time, I started seeing that mental illness started kicking in and sickness in her body. And she would go to a doctor over here to deal with this prescription medication. She would go to a doctor over here to deal with this, another prescription over here. And before I knew it, she had no control. In fact, she was totally trapped in her body. And as cancer took her last breath, I realized that sometimes misalignment doesn't look like avoidance, like my car. Sometimes it doesn't look like a detour too long in the wrong direction. Sometimes misalignment actually looks like quiet compliance. You see, she gave her power away, hoping that the people who were supposed to help her would take care of her, would nourish her, would heal her, but they never saw her. Well, when my mom passed, something inside of me woke up that said, Theresa, it's time to take back your power. And so I started doing the work. I opened up that glove compartment of my life, and I opened up the owner's manual for the first time. I started digging in. Who am I? What am I doing? I started thinking, okay, what are the warning signs? What do I need to do to get back into line? And so I created what I now call the 3R treatment. R1, recognize. I have to recognize those warning signs that show up in my life, those flashing lights on the dashboard, those pits in our stomach that tell us we've been on this journey or in this relationship too long, and those warning signs that our health gives us. Recognizing is the absolute first step, but I was the queen of putting it back for the sake of achievement. So recognize those warning signs. R2, recalibrate. You see, you're the only one that can get into that manual, that owner's manual, and say, okay, what is it? How does this work? What am I supposed to do? Because guess what? Just like a vehicle was made for perfection, so were you. You were designed to be perfect the exact way that you are, without the road damage, without all the hiccups and the pushbacks. So recalibrate so that you can get back into alignment. And finally, R3, return to the road. And sometimes that's the hardest one. When we realize that we've done all the work with recalibration, sometimes shame can kick in and we can think, why did I let myself get so far off course? But returning is the ultimate step to getting into your purpose. So return to the road with all of the power, all of the drive, and all of what you were created for. I survived that accident, the one on the highway, and all of the little ones as well. All of the ones that nobody saw because I was wearing a mask. But before that shift in the steering wheel becomes a shake, we must learn to recognize, recalibrate, and return. My dad was right. Misalignment is dangerous. In fact, misalignment can lead to death. Death of items, death of passion, death of impact, death of purpose, and death of persons. But realignment leads to life. So I want to challenge you today. Again, take back your power. Remember the 3 R's. Recognize, recalibrate, and return. Because just maybe, your purpose and your passion was not meant to go off into the drift and die. And maybe that crash that stopped you was the one thing that was designed to set you free. Thank you.